Friends, it's my extreme privilege and honor today to really have with me in this conversation Jenny Clarke, who's the co-founder CEO of SameYou, which is doing tremendous work in the area of brain injury recovery. And she's going to share her vision. And I also have my dear friend, mentor, collaborator, Dr. Deepak Chopra, who is really paving the way globally with well-being. But the new initiative we are co-founding is about bringing well-being into the metaverse. And we just announced our collaboration to really look at NFT for good and why we need to come together as a global community to raise awareness and champion brain injury recovery. So with that, Jenny, why don't you kind of maybe start the conversation with your vision for the world?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Poonacha. So just a very quick summary. We care about this so passionately because of our personal lived experience. So lots of people know that while Amelia was filming Game of Thrones, she had two serious brain bleeds, one in the first season and then one 2 years later. She survived and she has thrived. And certainly as a close family, we saw that we were very, very fortunate and very rare. Sadly, we're not rare in having had the experience, the shattering traumatic experience of nearly losing somebody, particularly, a daughter, somebody in their early 20s. But it is such a big neglected issue because 155 million people globally are currently living with the consequences of brain injury. Now, whether that's a stroke, it could be a tumor, it could be a hemorrhage, an aneurysm, as Amelia had. So what we saw was that people don't even talk about it. And Amelia felt that there was tremendous stigma and actually the word shame, actual shame about people trying to get back to their lives once they've had a brain injury, because it's actually very misunderstood and it's actually not even properly understood. And people think that people with a stroke is really only older people, and everybody has a perception of that. But what we're trying to do is to bring global awareness to the issue that is so huge that it is estimated that $800 billion each year is the cost to society worldwide by not taking care of the people after they've suffered their major traumas. So we're here to try and do our very little to join everybody else, collaborate with the leaders in the world, the leading clinicians, the wonderful researchers, people who really have experienced brain injury, and people like yourselves who really care passionately and understand that your brain is so complex, so individual. And when you've had a brain injury, you need to recover. So the customer view is that you need to recover your physical impairment or your cognitive problems. And nobody actually addresses the fact that brain injury happens to the whole person. So you can't just treat one element of what's happened to you. You have to provide holistic, long-term, individualized recovery care.
Dr. Chopra, this is something, we talk about mental health, suicide prevention. I think we just finished a conversation earlier about the human brain. What's your reflection and your vision? You want to share your thoughts on this?
First of all, it's a great honor to collaborate with Jenny and Amelia Clarke on this next adventure that we're embarking on, bringing awareness of brain health and brain injury to the world, and also raising funds for research and long-term research, but also how do we activate the research into practical outcomes. So just as an aside, when I was in medical school, we thought that the brain was pretty fixed as an organ, that brain neurons never recovered, that you could not create neurons, you could possibly create new synaptic connections. And we've come a long way. Now we know that every experience, every sensory input from sound, music, sensation, images, feelings, thoughts, all of them come together to actually sculpt the brain that we have. We are born with many more neurons than we need. And so our brain is constructed from our genes. But after that, every experience changes the brain. So we can say the brain is created by genes, but sculpted by experience. That experience could be, in the case of brain injury, something like rehab, which is very important and missing in a lot of people's lives. But now there are other neurotechnologies, including vagal stimulation, artificial intelligence, VR, what we call augmented reality. All these are coming together with very standard therapies. So we know that every experience can sculpt the brain in a certain direction, and that there are phenomena like neurogenesis, which means you actually create neurons that didn't exist before, and then synaptogenesis, you actually sculpt the connection between neurons to create a dynamic connectome in the brain. It's not just the number of cells, but what connects to what. So, Jenny said it has to be individualized, because yes, the brain of a pianist is different than the brain of a gymnast, or different than the brain of an actress. And even within that, there are very specific things that are totally individual. So I think the future of well-being, including the future of how we take care of the brain is very precise, very predictable, very personalized. It requires a certain element of participation between caretakers and patients, and it's a process. But as we map out the brain dynamically in stages of recovery, this kind of research will become very, very, very precise. And I'm very optimistic that as we move forward, we'll be able to create healthy brains. We now also know that low-grade depression, low-grade anxiety, inflammation precede chronic illness by decades sometimes. And we can pick that up very early stages. But then when people have injuries like Amelia did, there are very precise ways to restore the connectome, restore synaptic interconnections, and actually generate neurons. This is the golden era of the brain. And I think if we really focus on healthy brains, ultimately, we can hope to aspire anyway for a critical mass of human brains that create a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. Right now, what we see out there as the world is pretty disastrous. And that's because our brains are conflicted. Even what we call the normal brain right now is sculpted by the hypnosis of social conditioning and old paradigms and conflict and polarization and politics and so on. But I think if we take a purely scientific approach in restoring brain health and combine it with all that we know about art, music, poetry, singing, all the things that actually stimulate a different part of our nervous system, the vagal nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, we can actually go beyond just restoring brain injury to peak performance and ultimately to peak living. That's my aspiration. And that's why I'm so grateful that we have this opportunity to take a real live example. Everyone knows who Amelia is. And so with her reach and her ecosystem, I think bringing awareness to not only brain injury and brain recovery, but peak performance and peak living, we can hope to create a different world. I mean, that's the biggest dream that
Absolutely.
one could have.
It certainly is. It certainly is.
Thank you, Deepak. I think really our collaboration with SameYou and SevaLove is really about the community. I think when Jenny and we started talking, we said we really need to bring together community around this very important topic. So as we kind of look into creating with this metaverse for good, NFT being just one aspect of it, it's really about bringing awareness, creating a cohesive community. And SameYou is a young organization, but doing amazing work. Jenny, do you want to share some of the things? I know even through the pandemic, you've launched neuro rehabilitation using telemedicine. Do you want to share some of your cutting edge initiatives you're currently working on?
Yes, that's great. But before I just do that, what I want to really make the point that why we've started the charity is not to talk about Amelia, but we were incredibly fortunate and aware that when we did launch, we had thousands and thousands of people write to us, and they told Amelia their story. And many of them, of these thousands, said it's the first time they felt able to talk to somebody, because Amelia telling her experiences in public has enabled them to feel better about themselves. So what I want to do first and foremost is to really see how to work with other people to galvanize voices from survivors and their carers, because these voices are currently unheard. They have no platform. And we hope that we can add an element of that to it. So working with you, this is one of the greatest honors and greatest opportunities to do that. So creating awareness, building brain injury recovery community and movement, we need to say, we can do better, demand better. If you've had a brain injury, you need to take some action. So we hope that with lots of other organizations, we can be a part of that. But we don't just want to create awareness, because it's so vitally needed now. Recovery and rehab, particularly in the pandemic, as you mentioned, there was not very much, people just couldn't go into people's homes and people couldn't come to clinics. So we worked with University College Hospital London and University College London. And they have a wonderful institution called Queen Square. And we put together some funding and some outreach, and we were able to put a group of survivors linked to the clinicians in an online environment. And that hadn't been done really before. And we were able to, with the help of Amelia's fans, who provided the funding, we were able to really put together this integrated brain, body and mind, as we call it, as we're not clinicians, support system for people and carers. And it's been phenomenally successful. And we're also piloting another one in a part of England, and we hope to have that commissioned by the NHS. So that's just one of the things. But we do think that the future is connecting people and giving access around the world where people don't have any help after they had a brain injury. So the only real way we can do that is through digital technologies. And so there is a very big vision that we have, that we will create a platform that is multifaceted, that has got tremendous support and involvement of the community themselves, of survivors and brain injury, survivors' families and their carers. So this is a really, really big aim. We have many more. We really want to create centres around the world that really do look at the social, emotional impact that happens post trauma, as well as giving the cognitive and disability therapies that currently do exist. But the other message I've got really is that they might exist in patches of wonderful excellence, but what we're looking for is parity. We want to stop the discrimination against people who can't access the centres of excellence and make this universally available.
Thank you, Jenny. I think from our perspective, from a SevaLove perspective, I think the connection about destigmatizing, connecting, creating a platform. And the main goal of this collaboration, the Metaverse for Good, with this particular NFT series, is to really raise funds to support SameYou's ambitions to do good in the world. So our perspective right now is to launch this collection of 3 series. One is the one-of-one, which is the NFT with a dress. Amelia, we have an exciting story to really create this 3D rendition hologram with Sebring. And then also a series called, Rapture, which is going to be one of 10, and then an open edition. Along with doing this NFT, we also want to educate. I mean, that's going to be we want also bring people accessible to this. And that's really the reason why we also built the technology the way we did. And I think the big story today is how are we doing this? How is this sustainable? And from a technology perspective, when we decided to build the Metaverse for Good with SevaLove, we partnered with Hedera. And Hedera is, from a network perspective, the greenest network. HBAR, which is the cryptocurrency, is the greenest cryptocurrency. And it is basically 5 million times less energy intensive than Bitcoin. And it's 100 times less energy, consume less energy than a Visa transaction. So our goal is to always look at the sustainability aspect. But Hedera's governing council also has companies like Google, IBM, Boeing, and what they're doing is that they actually want to make the network carbon negative. So they're partnering with a company called TerraPass, which audits the Hedera network, and they buy carbon offsets to basically make sure the network is negative. And from a SevaLove perspective, since we also will have an ETH bridge, we want to make sure that we take whatever transactions are out there and we offset it, working with companies like Dovu. So our goal today is to do good and do well and support organizations to do what they do, like SameYou, and build communities. So I'm super excited. And I just wanted to share that, just from overall, the big vision of why we do what we do. Deepak, any thoughts? And Jenny, before we kind of close this conversation?
Everything Jenny said, of course, I totally agree with. But here is what I think we need to go next. This morning, Poonacha and I, Jenny, had breakfast before we came here with the president and founder of the Brain Mapping Society. And they have thousands of scientists that work on every aspect of the brain, from cognition to perception to consciousness to neural rewiring, etc. And what I was thinking is, as we continue our collaboration with you, we can bring in the best scientists that know about cognitive therapy, rehab therapy, neuroplasticity. But then we can go further, where we bring in storytellers, entertainers, musicians, and media and education to create a new story for brain recovery and brain health. Because unless there's a story that actually changes people's minds emotionally to do something, as you said, it's not about just increasing awareness. Of course, that's the first step. We can only change that which we are aware of. But now we need, for a new story, social scientists are saying if you want to create a new paradigm, you need maximum diversity, which means not only neuroscientists, but everybody in the field of AI and artificial intelligence and neurotechnology. You need the scientists, you need the technologists, but you also need the storytellers, and you also need humanitarians, and you need people in the world of education and media. When you have that kind of maximum diversity and shared vision and complement everybody's strengths, then the future of brain health and brain well-being will actually create a new ecosystem of world health and well-being, I think. And that includes everything from, Poonacha mentioned climate change. So you have to address that. We mentioned other things that are happening in the world that have to do with our brain health. So we need to look at everything together for this new paradigm to emerge. And that's why we are thrilled to start this initiative with you. But be warned, we are going to bring in many more scientists and storytellers so that what you're doing can move to the next level as well.
Well, that's incredible and incredibly grateful, because when Amelia and I discussed how we would do this charity and what we wanted to achieve, she really had immediately the understanding, of course, that bringing the creative arts at least into this recovery journey for people is hugely exciting. And maybe we can do another Zoom conversation and at a later date where we can share with you our ideas that we've got for creating a center that does everything actually as you just described. So wonderful.
Look forward to that.
Once again, Jenny and Deepak, thank you so much. Really excited about the SevaLove and SameYou collaboration. And the real focus for us is to bring awareness to brain injury recovery, rehabilitation, and the journey just started. So really look forward to collaborating, and I'm grateful for all the support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
so much.
Poonacha.